Hello everybody, and welcome to this week's Wednesday Walkabout. My name is Steve Wright. I'm the Director of Horticulture and Curator here at Jenkins Arboretum. And today I'm going to do something a little bit different. Up until this point, all of our walkabouts have focused pretty heavily on flowers, which makes sense for a woodland garden. You know, most of the flowers are blooming in spring. And I want to talk about foliage a little bit. So let's go look at some leaves. So as I mentioned, here we are nearing the end of our bloom season for the rhododendrons and azaleas. And it's really a perfect time to talk about foliage because really these plants are only blooming for a few months out of the year. And the rest of the year, you're just looking at green. So why not select some really interesting plants that have some really amazing foliage? So I'm standing here with one of the more interesting plants in our collection. This is a Rhododendron maximum, the Rose Bay rhododendron. It's a native species, but this is a selection called Whirlygig, and you can see that the foliage is sort of contorted and twisted. It's really quite interesting and makes a statement in the landscape. So one of the more interesting things about the collection here at Jenkins Arboretum is really the diversity of our collection. And part of that diversity is a result of growing things out from seed. And when you grow things from seed, you're never really quite sure what you're going to get, because you have genetics from the pollen parent and the seed parent, and you get this wide range of variation. So I'm actually going to show you a series of 3 plants here that are all related. They're all grown out from seed from a species called metternichii. And so this is the first one. So if I flip over a leaf of metternichii, you can see these bronze hairs on the underneath side. It's very fuzzy. This is called indumentum. And indumentum is a characteristic of many rhododendron species, and the purpose of this is actually to prevent moisture loss and to protect from cold in some of the colder climates. Many of these species originate in the mountains of China, where it is very harsh and very cold in the winter. So if I move down just one plant, here's another metternichii seedling. What's interesting about this is it has the same indumentum, but it also has what's called tomentum. So the tomentum is when it has these brown fuzzy hairs on the top of the leaf. I showed this to the staff the other day, and we actually rubbed the tomentum off of one of these leaves so that you could see that underneath it all, it's just a green shiny leaf. But all this new growth has this bronze sort of velvet look to it. And so the last plant in this row is a little bit older, it's a little bit more established, and it actually looks quite different. The foliage is much shinier, it's much thinner, and it's actually quite blue as opposed to being sort of this bronze color. This also has indumentum from the metternichii, and one of the things that I thought was quite interesting about this is it still has some seed pods on it, and even the seed pods on this one are fuzzy. So here we have another open pollinated seedling, a one-of-a-kind plant. This is a plant that was grown from seed of Rhododendron decorum, another Asian species. And this just has really exceptional blue foliage, fairly short and kind of rounded. Makes a really nice statement in the landscape. In a previous walkabout, I talked about the differences between the large leaf and the small leaf rhododendrons. And I actually talked about how the large leaf rhododendrons had large leaves and the small leaf rhododendrons had small leaves. Well, that's not always the case. Here I am with a large leaf rhododendron that has very small leaves. This is called Minas Grand Prix. It is one of my favorite rhododendrons, especially for foliage. As you see, they're very small, they're almost round, and they're quite blue. Here I am now with a hybrid called Babylon. This is a hybrid that was created using a very large leaf species called Calophytum. We've had a couple of Calophytum hybrids in our collection that just haven't made it, but this is one of the few that have held on. And you see it has these very long, sort of slender leaves. Again, another big statement piece for the landscape. There are actually several large leaf species of rhododendrons, mostly native to the mountainous regions of China. Unfortunately, they do not do well in Philadelphia's hot and humid summer climate, so we cannot grow many of them, but we're going to keep trying. So here we are with another one-of-a-kind plant in the Arboretum. This is an open pollinated seedling from a species called brachycarpum. And I just love the foliage quality of this plant. Very dark leaves, very shiny. And one thing I notice most is how deeply sort of indented all of these veins are coming out from the midrib. It's really quite an attractive specimen. This plant here has a very similar look to brachycarpum that we just saw. The only difference is that the leaves are a little bit smaller and they're not quite as dark green. This is actually a hybrid that was created by a local colleague of ours with Janet Blair crossed with Wardii and Maccabianum. So to finish up our walkabout for the day, I'd like to tell you about a plant that's pretty special to me. This is a Rhododendron maximum. It's a native rhododendron. It's called Red Max. And Red Max was discovered as a single individual growing in the Smoky Mountains that exhibited red flowers, which is extremely rare. It's the only plant that was ever found to have red flowers. And what's particularly interesting about this is that everything about this plant is red. You can see that many of the leaves, especially out at the tips, are red. And then where they're not red, at least they're partially red, along that mid vein. And if you break a piece off, and I'm going to do that, so when it's broken, you can actually see that even the sap of this plant is red. And nobody's actually certain why that is the case. But like I said, it's one of a kind. There are no other Red Maxes in the world. So what's kind of unfortunate though about Red Max is that when it's in cultivation, it doesn't always have red flowers. In fact, it rarely has red flowers. There's a lot of variation in the color range, but it's usually pink, or sometimes there are pink and white flowers together on the same plant. But you almost never see red flowers on a Red Max in cultivation. I'm going to try to include a link to this video to a story about Red Max because it is so fascinating, so interesting. So, and with that, I would like to say thank you for joining me on this Wednesday Walkabout. I hope you do come to the Arboretum for a walk. We are open to the public from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. We'll see you soon.